Nah, just send your complaints to Bandai, as they really do deserve it after this sort of drop in quality. We open this series with a girl traveling with her rather young-looking grandpa. Like, seriously, a few wrinkles and gray hair doesn't distract from the fact how this guy's general face looks like the younger characters, but whatever. He was helping his daughter move in by watching the granddaughter named Chizuko for about a week. With that, they arrived in their little town of Nanigashi, and a kind of clever little title drop through some shipment trucks in the background. Though, I do wonder where those shipments will end up. Maybe on our shores, and maybe not. But yeah, after a bit of an excessive amount of exposition, we learned that Naigashi was your fairly typical little town in the boonies, where nothing much out of the ordinary happened. It was near the ocean, it had like maybe one significantly sized shopping center, and occasionally had a few kaijin running around. Chizuko, let's not go there. I mean, yeah, she was talking about the kaijin because the villain who was controlling them was wired in the manga pages this came from, but still, let's try to avoid spats on Twitter. But yeah, it's worth mentioning that the first half of this episode actually isn't something from the original manga. The manga actually started with Chizuko in school, which we'll see play out exactly in just a bit, but still, starting with a bit more of a prologue here isn't a bad idea, as it did give us a good idea of what the other characters in the show were gonna be like, and also, it was meant to establish how Chizuko was a rather jaded teenager. While not outright emo, she was rather detached from this whole country life thing, which was understandable, as it was established that due to her mom's job, they've had to move around a lot, so unable to make any sort of lasting relationships with others, she's just been kind of going with the flow for a while now. Granted, they did kind of over-explain all of this a little too much, probably because this is anime original stuff, but still, overall good storytelling, especially after we see how her perspective ends up changing. Also, these two look kinda significant, but I'm sure they won't play into anything later. Anyway, while checking out the aforementioned shopping center, Chizuko encountered a rather unusual looking kitty and its owner. Oh, hey, Inori Minase, the VA of Carol from Sinful Gear, and the best of the Kira Kira team. I wonder if that'll play into anything, and we get my answer in the very next scene, as she transformed into a magical girl persona known as Berry Blossom. Obviously, through that name, and her character design that was done by Toshie Kawamura, she was as stereotypical as magical girls get, and she even fought your typical starter boss with this guy named Chrome. They ended up fighting dangerously close to this one homeless guy's camp, so Barry had to deal with him quick. No, girl, you're supposed to hug them and not smash them into a million pieces. Didn't you and Yami get the memo? Also, it's worth mentioning that a lot of the action in the show is going to be handled by Kaicho Terada, who's a bit more known for his mech anime like Gundam, Erika 7, and most importantly, Godana, so you know we're in good hands. In fact, this whole sequence was so well animated that it inspired Chizuko to lose her emo cut and decide to live with her grandfather for the time being, just so that she could be closer to her beloved magical girl. It's a good juxtaposition, showing how much more energized she was compared to the beginning of this episode. With that though, we finally did enter into where the original manga actually started, where they probably could have cut some of this monologue since they just gave us an additional prologue, but whatever. Chizuko had become a massive stan for Berry Blossom, though thankfully not one who is above criticizing the lack of proper action scenes as of late. Girl, can I hire you to write some of my wonderful Precure reviews? But yeah, she ended up speaking her criticisms to Chrome, who was just kind of right behind her for the sake of the plot. And like most first general scrubs, he was so weak after a battle that even the average girl in Chizuko could handle him no problem. However, he honestly just wanted to have a little bit more of a talk with her. You better make it quick, Chizuko. I think you have a meeting with Masha Base soon. But yeah, on that note, this show is gonna follow a bit of a similar premise as gushing over magical girls, though in this case, the magical girl Stan and the evil general were two separate people, though as we'll soon see, the degeneracy, while nowhere near as NSFW, was still present in this show. As while like most first bosses, he did manage to initially overwhelm Barry, she quickly made a comeback. I think I can actually hear Utena saying that this guy gets it. I mean, again, the premises are very similar, as the focus of these stories are going to be on the villains who are trying to draw out the best in some magical girls by following the usual tropes of the genre, highlighting their importance in most series whilst lampooning them in fun ways. FYI, I don't think Gushing ripped off this series, as these sorts of parodies have been around for ages, and villain appreciation has always kind of been a thing in the magical girl genre. Anyway, Chrome, kind of knowing his position and the fact that he was probably going to get killed off in the 5th episode, wanted to get some villain advice from Chizuko, but for now, she wasn't willing to cooperate with the evil villain. However, this was also a reborn manga, so they did have to throw in some Bishi stuff. Yeah, even the pedal bears are giving you a bra moment there. With that, our first episode ended with Chizuko running into him again as he worked his other job at a convenience store. We'll save talking about the ending theme for later, as the show actually got 2 episodes for its first airing. Chizuko reunited with her fellow magical girl Stan whilst purchasing some berry merch. However, while Chrome was off the evildoer clock, other more typical scumbags weren't. From here, we then got the show's rather cleverly put together opening sequence, starting with some good fourth wall breaking of Chrome moving the tile away from his face, to this good bit of visual storytelling of Chizuko letting go of Barry's hand as she slunk back into a shadowy background, obviously hinting at her ultimately signing with Chrome. And this dream sequence was then ruined by her grandfather waking her up with a freaking conch shell, but was made up for with some comedic bits of Barry reflecting on her time with Chrome, but also slowly realizing that she needed villains in her magical girl life to give it meaning, which both him and Chizuko were willing to provide. Appropriately, the singer of this opening was Inori Minase, so it was kind of like Barry narrating all of this to herself. From there, we got some really well animated Sakuga before the reveal of an even greater evil, because of course the show also has to pull a bigger jaws.
Oh my god, now we have a common enemy, we have to work together.
It then ended wholesomely enough with everyone eating some Hayashi rice together before going back to business and thoroughly enjoying in the magical girl and villain cycle as usual. Great stuff that effectively highlighted all of the major themes of the show. With that, we then return to the robbery in process, with Chrome literally folding to a guy with a steak knife. Of course, Chizuko expected Barry to come in and serve the day, as she also just so happened to be at the store at the time, but Chrome knew a little better, as we'd soon see. Still, Barry decided to take action and transform. Well, okay, so what sort of magical phrase did she go to say to initiate her fanciful little stock animation? I think you got your toy eyepiece a little mixed up. Anyway, she came in for the save in the most magical way possible.
Look out! Look out! Look out! Good Lord, what a hilarious!
But yeah, in an actually good bit of world building, Chrome explained the divide between magical girls and the cops, with one dealing with villains of the magical variety, while the other dealt with your normal criminal scum, as the former could legit off your typical bank robber. Barry obviously ended up overstepping those bounds because of Chizuko's expectations, and thus had to leave the scene before the fuzz arrived, like your typical street vigilante, not that her fangirl minded that much. Regardless, this added to Chrome's argument that Barry needed stronger magical enemies that she could properly go all out on, though personally, I'd be all for seeing magical girls putting criminals in sleeper holds, but that's probably just me. The next day, Chizuko returned home to find her grandfather conversing with guess who, yeah, you can guess who it was. She was so shocked by this that she even ignored her grandpappy saying that he knew Chrome. Then again, she didn't have much time to process anything, as Chrome teleported both of them to his evil organization's HQ. However, she didn't have time to deal with this crap, as there was going to be a special news report about Berry Blossom. Yeah, those copyright bots are a real pain in the ass. Of course, like most Precure villains, he managed to convince her to stick around thanks to some good old gaslighting. With that, he gave her a little tour of the place.
許可とか下りないでしょ。
こちとら悪の組織だなされた存在なのだ。
You're only saying that because you don't want to pay the property taxes, you damn squatter. Eventually, they came upon a storage closet, and yeah, I may as well just use this clip.
漫画とかだと体育倉庫ってよく閉じ込められたりするよね。
何かが突っかかってる。
And apparently, he couldn't even use magic to teleport them out, as their evil organization set strict caps on how much magic they could use in a month, with the teleportation to this place having put him over the limit. Worst of all, Chizuko could even call her grandpa to tell him to DVR the news report that she chose not to schedule herself, out of fear that said grandpa would see it. Oh, come on, girl. A true stan would never be barred by little things like that. This all left her even more vulnerable to the temptation of joining Chrome, as she'd be able to create her own buried news reports by directly opposing her. She still resisted, but this seemingly made Chrome realize that there was another way they could get out by having Chizuko join the organization and thus gain her own evil magic plan.
月末に契約はもったいないが。 背に腹は変えられんだろ?
Just cancel it before your credit card processes it and you should be fine. And that's probably what Chizuko thought as she signed on the dotted line. She then tried to use her new magic to open the door, but as it turned out, it was all for nothing, as not only did her grandpa end up opening the door for them, but Chrome also could have teleported them out at any time because...
I forgot to tell you.
Yeah. I lied!
Also, yeah, as it turned out, the Evil HQ had been built directly under the grandfather's house after he took Chrome in, which, yeah, just kind of adds to that squatter comment. With that, we then got the ending theme to the show, which featured a very poppy song by Kanoe Rena, the singer behind the opening to Jellyfish Can't Swim at Night, a great show by the way, and the villains going to the hardware store to buy supplies to build an evil berry bot, in a very cute sequence, complete with a little dance number that Barry also joined in on. It was cute and comedic stuff to appropriately close out a show like this. And with that, this second episode ended with an epilogue of Chrome and Chizuko training the Kumakaijin. The former obviously failed miserably at taming them, whilst the latter won them over with candy and of course the fact that she was a little girl who got proper hugs rather than the bro hug. These first couple of episodes were a pretty fun little parody of the magical girl genre. As I've said, I generally like the premise of exploring the villain side of many superhero shows and see how they try to deal with the usual tropes and cliches of their genre. Some parts from the original manga could have been cut off from this adaptation to make things flow a little better, but still, it went at a nice enough pace for these first two episodes. When doing a parody show, you have to have a strong understanding of the genre that's being lampooned. What are some of its more significant tropes and story beats, and why does it appeal to such a wide audience? In the case of this show, I think they got most of it down by of course exaggerating the many cliches of the magical girl genre, from Barry just looking like a stereotype of the archetype, and of course Chrome being the hapless first general, albeit kind of more along the lines of Team Rocket and the Third Seaters. But yeah, with the show focusing more on him and Chizuko, we end up with a story that explores the importance of magical girl villains and how they're meant to make them stronger. Barry herself also has the makings of an interesting character, as she clearly suffers from self-confidence issues and wants to present herself as a proper hero of justice, even risking getting busted by an even greater enemy to magical girls in the police. I'm looking forward to more interactions between all three of these characters, as not only would there be some good comedy, but also some interesting conflicts of interest, with Chizuko now being in the same position as Lieutenant Hiragi. And yeah, I get that a lot of people have their issues with gushing over magical girls and would prefer this relatively safer for work show, but personally, I see them as apples and oranges. They both have their places as magical girl parodies and explore villain dynamics in their own ways. I can enjoy both an ecchi and shoujo take just fine. And these first two episodes have overall won me over with some good comedy and fun characters. Sure, there was some clunkiness due to them adding in a prologue that ended up making parts of the original manga redundant, but otherwise, at this pace, I think they should be able to cover the manga's entire run, which only really spanned 5 volumes. We'll see how things work out for this little band of ne'er-do-wells, and Cure Parfait trying to break out on her own. Thank you for watching, and do be sure to check out some of our other videos on this channel, in particular one we're going to be releasing soon that's going to be a nice little follow-up to this. I won't spoil the surprise, but you might be able to figure it out just from these clips, in particular this little bit that we are particularly proud of. And if you can't figure out the context behind that, well, do check back early next week. And until then though, for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna see if I can't get in contact with a custom painter.